So we're starting with our listen along series. We're in Econ Unit 1, AS level, Chapter 2, Economic Methodology. So in this, we have exactly 5 subtopics in this chapter. We're going to start off with what is economics. So now that we've understood what is the fundamental economic problem, which is basically that there are scarce resources and unlimited wants. Now, in order to understand it better, it can be divided into two parts: microeconomics and macroeconomics. Microeconomics is basically about individual markets, how a household interacts with a business. And what can you understand from that? That how can we explain how consumers buy some goods and not the others, right? And macroeconomics is the study of the whole economy. It also looks at how consumers and firms interact, but on a broader level. And it also involves government involvement. It shows how one economy is growing at a faster pace than the other economy, right? Then going off as a social science, it's a social science because it's also looking at the human behavior, whereas it's also a science because it's also putting forward and investigating theories in the same way as scientists. And as part of the science part, the putting forward theories is called models. The theories put forward are called models, and these are simplified representation what was actually taken place and are usually explained mathematically, right? So they can be used over and over again to test theories, and they have a proper way of it being done. You have to define the problem, put forward a theory, investigate the theory, and accept or reject the theory. That's what economists do. Now, before getting into the depth of that, we have positive and normative statements. So the main total difference is that positive statements are based on actual facts. Like, okay, a fall in supply leads to an increase in price, right? An increase in this amount of number has created this amount in employment, right? It's an actual fact that's observed and can be reported on and can be fact checked. That is a positive statement. Whereas a normative statement is an opinion. You can't exactly back that with analysis. That's why, how can you differentiate a positive and normative statement? Normative statements usually contain words like should, likely to, might result, was the worst in 10 years. So these are all more of a probable, uncertain sort of a statement that are based on an opinion. So positive statements are based on facts, normative statements are based on opinions. And then ceteris paribus. So this is basically saying that in the background, everything else is remaining the same. So why do we use this term ceteris paribus then? So whenever we're trying to model the theory, model the changes in one particular thing, we're trying to analyze why a certain something is changing something else, we want to make sure that everything else is staying normal so that we can actually focus on what the effect is, right? Without all the other variables involved. Since it's a concept that ensures its other things are equal, we can include this in any of our essays when it's relevant. Next part is the margin. The margin is another tool basically to simplify situation. So it says that one small change in X leads to a bigger change in Y. Like here the example says, a small change in consumer income will lead to further small changes in other variables such as consumer spending and imports. Now, if your consumer income has increased, your consumer spending also might increase by a little bit based on how much your income has increased, right? So a small change in one variable has led to a even smaller changes in other variables, right? So for example, firms will produce up to the point where the revenue is generated by an extra unit of output is equal to the cost of producing it. This will be covered much more in depth in later topics, but right now, what you have to understand is that margin helps us understand that a small change in one variable, such as consumer income, will lead to further small changes in other variables. Last part of this chapter is that there's an importance of time periods. While we're trying to model the change around the world, we can do that by seeing whether it's in short run, long run, or very long run, right? But one common misconception is that short run may be 2 or 3 months and long run is one year. No. Short run and long run or very long run are not based on the time scale. Instead, they're based on how many factors of production can be changed. Now, as we can recall, what are the factors of production? FOP, as in factors of production, are four: land, labor, capital, which is basically money, and enterprise, which is basically a firm which enables all of these other three and produces an output, right? So these are the four factors of production. According to these three different time periods, short run means one of these changes. Only one of the factor of production changes. Only one FOP changes. Like suppose here it says labor is changed. It can be increased or decreased to change what is being produced, right? That's short run. Short run is basically saying one factor of production is changing. Whereas long run is saying that all factors of production, all four of them are changing. Land, labor, capital, and enterprise are changing, right? And then very long run, on the other hand, it says that all four factors of production are changing. Along with that, other key inputs are also changing. And these other key inputs can be either technology, government regulations, and social issues. And all of these are changing. That's when it's very long run. So three different time periods. They're based on not on time scale. They're based on how many factors of production are changing. Factors of production are basically the resources. Factors of production are resources, right? The inputs that help us run the economy: land, labor, capital, enterprise. So for short run, it is one factor of production changing. Long run, all four of them changing. Very long run is all four of factors of production changing in the environment, along with key inputs such as government decisions, technology, all of them changing. So that's the end of this chapter.